Right?
All right, Dave, good morning. How are you?
Good, very good, Dan.
Good. I'm fine, thanks. I appreciate your willingness to chat a little bit about Metagami. For the people that are going to be viewing this, will you do me a favor and tell me about your background? What have you done career-wise that led you to Metagami?
Sure. I was a earned value management and a cost analyst, cost estimator for both the Air Force and NASA. Did that 30 years. I'm retired now. The interest that I had in cost estimating pushed me into risk management. And for cost estimating and for risk management, the advantage of getting a lot of data over time is extremely important. And so by the time I made it to NASA, which was in 2003, and we had known each other for a while then, because we had done some work, I think, for proposal development and in one of your other products.
Right.
But you had recently gotten involved with Metagami, what eventually became Metagami. And it offered a great deal of advantage to collect and store and be able to manipulate a lot of cost data. I saw it as a cost data collection tool and repository, and it was extremely efficient. And when we develop a database in Metagami, as opposed to the traditional way of developing a database, we didn't have to set out all of the requirements way ahead of time in design and architecture. It seemed to be just such a more efficient way to collect data and attach itself to other databases that already existed, and then utilize that data in a report that we would have the NASA contractors who are building the satellites and launch vehicles for NASA be able to access all that data in a report called the CADRE. I kind of forgot what the CADRE exactly stood for, but it was a report that was delivered periodically by the contractors to NASA, so that we would have a repository of data from which we could extract some rules for generating ever more accurate and credible cost estimates. So that's really how I became aware of and then began to try to utilize the development of this cadre at NASA in about 2005, 2006, I believe. That's about when the time frame was.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. So the cadre actually allowed you to capture data that was numeric and textual, and as I recall, there were a whole range of different data types that were automatically incorporated as that development of cadre evolved.
Absolutely. We could capture the actual cost of formerly completed projects that NASA had developed, satellite projects, launch vehicle projects, and we could store that data in the cadre system.
Okay. And you had indicated that the dynamic nature of Metagami was one of the characteristics that made it most appealing and different from other tools you might have selected.
Oh, absolutely. The ease with which the software would either attach itself to data that already existed, of which NASA has a lot, but it's a very old-fashioned static database. Metagami has forgot the exact protocol, but as long as the databases, which is very common, I think, standard protocol,
Right.
They can link up to that kind of a database and then just pull in all the information that it needs. In addition, all the new data that would be coming in, like on a quarterly basis or a semi-annual or annual basis, could be added to the data that already existed. And so this database would grow. And the unique aspect of it was you never know exactly all the kinds of data you want or the reports you want to make, or the way you want to see the data. Under a traditional database development effort, you have to go back to the database designer and change the requirements, and then do more programming to allow the new features to be developed. Whereas with Metagami, it was kind of transparent. You just want what you want, and you set up a new table and with the page function, and off you go. So it was very efficient. I thought it was, quantum leap above the existing kind of capability that existed.
Well, we certainly concur with that. I appreciate you saying that. One of the fun recollections I have was when Cadre was completed, and we sat down in a conference room with a number of people who had been told about it but had not actually participated in it, and we demonstrated Cadre and started talking about Metagami. Do you recall the people that were enthusiastic and asked questions about, well, if this has happened, can't we add pages to do this? Or can we do other things with Metagami that either relate to or are separate from this?
Yeah, one of the things that did surprise me, not being anywhere near an expert in database development or anything of that nature, software-wise, when we did talk to the IT people, the information technology people at NASA, they're always a little skeptical, when you describe something new, and they would sit down and we'd go through the demo, and I'd see their eyes light up, like, what? You can do that? Well, if you can do that, can you go do this? And they would just ping from one idea to the next. And finally, the guys were just shaking their heads and going, "This is incredible! This is a great tool. This is wonderful. I didn't think anybody could ever do this before."
Yeah.
So yeah, I do remember those, and I think there were a couple groups that we talked to that
Right.
had that kind of a response.
Yes, I recall that as well. And that's one of the most exciting things. I just have to comment myself. As I show the product to people, they start applying it to what they know. Oh my gosh, I'm in real estate. I could have done this and this and this. How do I apply that in that particular environment? Or I'm a reseller of furniture and I need the ability to do such and this could work really well for that. And the thing that intrigues me so much about the software is that it creates in the minds of people a way to relate it and apply it to things that they're familiar with, as happened with the IT guys. That's one of the most exciting things, is it has such a broad focus, and it's really adaptable to anyone using a PC, regardless of what they're doing, if they're trying to do things with data. And that's kind of evidenced by the discussions that we just spoke about.
Yeah.
Any other things that come to mind? I also remember when we first started the project, the goal was specifically to capture information on incoming cadres so that, as you had indicated, the people at NASA could review the results of that project over time, I think on a quarterly basis. And at the time we began, I had mentioned to you that you were going to be surprised at the end, because as a mere byproduct of using Metagami and capturing the data by project, by time period, we were going to create the history database that you made mention of, where you could just as easily look across projects and gather historical information as you could look within a project to see how it was evolving over time. And that's what kind of you alluded to earlier, that creates, in this case, as a byproduct of what we were doing to manage the projects, it created that repository that could be useful in future estimates.
Well, exactly. That's kind of the essence of the cost estimating profession, is you look at all sorts of past projects and collect the actual cost, and then put that data into a mathematical formulation, regression analysis of some sort, where the projections from the data that you can extract from the past, you can apply to future requirements, and then project a cost that is along the same lines as the past data would indicate, and that creates the foundation for the budget requests that would go into Congress on an annual basis in the President's budget for the funds needed to fund, an exploration initiative or a deep space initiative, and so on. One other aspect that I remember distinctly, when I was at NASA, what I was very concerned with was bringing in all of the people who were involved in analyzing the risks involved in trying to push the state of the art, which NASA as well as the Air Force always does in their space programs. And so there's a lot of risk that's attendant to these major projects, and there are different groups of people who analyze risks who never talk. And one of the reasons that they never talk is that there is not one repository where all of them collaborate, because each one of them has a slightly different perspective on the risk. You've got the technical folks who identify the deep technical issues, the design issues, the difficulty in literally pushing the state of the art in some already existing technology, but they want to evolve it into a next version, a next level. And they generally do not talk to the cost estimating community, who is more focused on looking at actual costs from the past to project cost into the future. Then there's the folks that deal with the ongoing performance as a contract, a project is underway. That's the earned value management community, and they all have a different perspective on risk and very much to offer in kind of the concept of the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts kind of a concept. And what's necessary is some tool that allows all of the different perspectives on risk to be placed in some repository, and at the same time have everyone have access to the other's perspective, such that it would inform the understanding of risk, and more importantly, the quantification of that risk in cost and schedule terms, so that the program managers and the project managers can actually do something real time with the project as it is moving through time and facing these risks and having to deal with them to mitigate them and retire them in real time. Also, in conjunction with the limits that their budgets kind of constrain them to, and gives them advanced knowledge of which requirements are going to be too hard for now to pursue, and which ones can be pursued if we do this, that, or the other thing to mitigate them. So the Metagami, to me, was just such a tool that would allow this kind of collaboration.
Well, and so what you're really talking about, in a sense, if it's used in the context you're describing, which is applicable in different ways to lots and lots of organizations, is really a real-time collaborative modeling tool, such that if you change performance characteristics, the model could actually update the cost, and if you change the cost, the model could update the technical or performance characteristics, while different people with different focuses are involved in that same interaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we were striving to attain at the time.
Yeah, it's definitely applicable in that environment. I said to someone the other day, Metagami is so difficult to describe. It's like a blind person hanging off of the tail of an elephant trying to describe the elephant, because it has so many different components, that serve different needs or needs of different people, that everybody can find something they like in it, and as people continue to get involved with it, they continue to appreciate other benefits, such as the one you just described, that weren't necessarily the reason for the use of the product, but nonetheless, as the product is used, its other components begin to reveal themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first idea of using Metagami was simply as a collection and repository for cost data, with an eye towards the cost estimating community using it kind of by itself. But once you get into the use of the tool, you can see that it can be used for collaboration, which all of a sudden is a complete quantum leap in a dimension that you didn't even think was possible before. And it was perfectly consistent with and synergistic with the collection of the data. And now you can actually not only do something with the data, program the formulas right into the Metagami tool, but also share all that information real time with people all over the country. You don't need to be hamstrung by a time constraint. You just you either leave as I recall, you leave your data available for someone, in California, if you're in Washington D.C., and then when they can get at it, they go for it, and they add their piece and provide it in a format that you can access at your leisure later on when it's convenient for you.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me, the first time I ever heard the word stovepipe was in an Air Force meeting that I was attending one time. And once I heard the term as applied to different stovepipes, different systems that capture data for different people or in different parts of the country or for different purposes, where the data frequently had commonality but was kept separately. And the Metagami concept and the collaborative thing you're talking about here is really the solution to that, because, as you will recall, a piece of data in Metagami gets entered once, and then any perspective, any view, any computation that needs to come from it occurs from that one single piece of data. And as a consequence, you're not building anything at all like a stovepipe. You're building the collaborative environment that eliminates the stovepipes that are bound, I now find, not just in Air Force and government situations, but in most major corporations as well.
No, absolutely. The essence of the different perspectives on risk from the different groups, the technical folks, the earned value folks, and the cost estimators are the typical example of stovepipes. They just don't talk. In a way, they didn't have a mechanism to share their ideas. And for example, the technical folks are good at identifying the likelihood of a risk occurring and a qualitative assessment of what kind of a consequence that risk could have on the project. But they are terrible at quantifying it because they're not cost people or they're not schedule people. They're not schooled in the disciplines of cost or the discipline of schedule. So you bring those people into the collaboration, and then all of a sudden you have a much more powerful result from the technical folks' input, which is somewhat limited, but then it can be processed by the people who are more familiar and expert in the disciplines of schedule and cost.
Indeed. And you mentioned earlier something that I think we need to emphasize as well, and that's currently one of the big buzzwords is data aggregation. Data that exists in these stovepipes, and how do we bring that together? And the ability of Metagami to reach into those different warehouses of data, extract what's needed from them, and bring them into Metagami where they can be manipulated, and then sent back to those same sources, as necessary or in a modified form, I think is a very important aspect of the collaboration and the elimination of stovepipes. It would be great if we built no future stovepipes, but better than that is the ability to get access to the data that currently exists in the stovepipes and bring it into a mode where it can be aggregated and work together.
And as I understand, the Metagami has the protocol to be able to reach in and get that data and pull it together in a coherent fashion so that all of it can be used. And again, the whole of that aggregation being much bigger than the sum of its parts.
Yes, and it does. Version 1 of Metagami, the what we call the engineering model, accomplished it in a very nice fashion, and version 2 ramps that up dramatically, so it does it even in a more efficient and more meaningful way. So that's exciting, one of the exciting aspects of version 2. So one final thing, now that you're retired, do you have thoughts about how Metagami might be useful to whatever endeavors you might pursue at this point?
I do. There are some aspects of Metagami that I would like to put to use and to put to in the collaborative manner that I can envision. It's just a matter of finding time to do that in my very busy retirement life.
I know, I have friends who are retired who tell me they've never been busier. I understand that's a problem. All right, well, Dave, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your willingness to cooperate and share those thoughts with us, and to let us interview. I will let us interview you. Thanks very much. I'll talk to you soon.
You're certainly welcome, Dan.
All right, bye-bye.